what's going on? Mike with this old Hotrod. Working on the car, working on the 34 Ford, and in the last video you guys saw me, I did the passenger side toe board. I wrapped that up. That actually went pretty smoothly, which was nice. And then what I did at the end of the video, I said to you guys, I'm gonna try to do a reverse, like a mirror image of the template and use it on the driver's side. It worked perfectly. The only thing I had to do is I ended up having to shorten the template itself about 3/4 of an inch. And then I also added some additional sheet metal. I ended up cutting the firewall a little bit just above the pedals. So I basically cut out a square, kind of had like jagged edges on it, and then added a full entire like plate of sheet metal for the pedals to pass through, and then also the steering column. I got that side all done. Again, I didn't film it. I had already done the passenger side. You guys saw the process. It was the exact same process, plus a little bit of additional work for the sheet metal around the pedals. But I'll show you guys how I ended up doing that. I think it came out pretty good. I got the transmission tunnel in the car. I got everything drilled and clecoed. So the transmission tunnel is in place. The toe boards are both in place. I now have the toe boards attached to the firewall with clecos, and I now have the transmission tunnel attached to the firewall also with clecos. I ordered some rib nuts. Some people call them rib nuts. Some people call them threaded inserts. It's the kind that you use with the big tool. It's like almost like a rivet. That's why they call it a rib nut, but it attaches itself to the sheet metal. It pinches it. It kind of crushes and holds itself. I ran out of the size that I need, so I haven't done any of the threaded inserts or anything on the flooring to the firewall. So once those come in, I think they'll be here tomorrow or the next day. Just ordered them on Amazon. It was like $11 for 100 of them. What I'm working on right now is in the back of the car. I'll show you. So you can see in here the back of the car. You can see the seat back. That's just a birch plywood. This area here, I had to pull this panel out, and then we moved all of this structure back. So what I did was this here, and then this here. I sectioned 2 inches off and just moved the seat backwards 2 inches. Obviously now what that's gonna do is it's gonna make this piece of sheet metal that was here, I'm gonna need to take 2 inches off of that. So that's what we have here. I got my jigsaw all set up. I got everything marked out. So basically I went 2 inches up, and then I transferred these notches, 3 notches for where the seat frame is. I just moved those up, and now I'm gonna get this cut first, and then I'll get these notched out. So once this piece is done and fitted back in the car, my next piece is gonna be the package tray behind the seat. I just have to section that also. Once that's done, I need to focus on building a new seat pan. So let's get this thing cut out, and we'll just keep moving forwards. Okay, so that's in there pretty good. I don't know why it's so blurry. It's in there pretty good. Obviously, it's just sitting. I have panels already made that go down along the side of the quarter panels from the top of the frame that fill in that entire void on both sides. Those are already made and painted. And all these pieces will be riveted into the back of the car onto the floor. And then eventually it'll be all insulated and carpeted at some point. That's how it's gonna stay. Let's work on the package tray. All right, so I have the package tray, the panel that I made, sitting right here on the table. This one's gonna be just a little more involved because the back of the car has a radius to it. As you can see here with this panel, a little bit of radius here, but a little more here. I basically just need to, at least on the flat part, bring it in 3 inches, bring these notches in 3 inches, and then figure out exactly where the radius is gonna go. So what my brain's telling me, in a perfect world, if I just take like a, I don't know, gauge thing and just open it up 3 inches and kind of follow the existing lines, it should work. But in my head, it makes sense, right? So I'll show you what I mean. But this is what I was thinking. I don't remember what this is called. I don't think, it's not a protractor. I know that. So I moved the seat back 3 inches. So all I'm doing is measuring, put that at 3 inches. So there to there. We're at 3 inches, and I'm going to take my little marker here and just kind of go around it. I should just be able to do this, right? You would think that would do it. You can see in the light where it scribed it. Oh, is that what it's called? A scribe? Maybe. I think that's how the experts do it. Pretty sure it is. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna make a couple measurements on the panel. I'm gonna just go double check them on the car from the back of the seat to the sail panel or the back of the car under the window. These 2 notches on this panel are for the deck lid hinges where they mount to the underside of the car. So just gotta make sure those are probably the most like pivotal part, like the most important piece of the measurement to make sure that everything lines up and I'm not opening them up a huge amount. All right, so I just tried fitting it in the car. I noticed that there's a couple of spots that have some interference, primarily at the hinges. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna add a little bit of a notch here. So that ought to help it slip back about the 1/2 inch it needs. And I'm gonna also notch this and then the other hinge. We're gonna do that right now, and then we're gonna try to get it fitted back in the car and see where we're at. After your first cuts, don't peel all the tape off, because you may end up having to make more cuts. So shame on me for doing that. I mean, I didn't mar it up too bad, but kind of wish I hadn't taken the tape off yet. All right, so I think I see the issue. So with this plywood here, the seat back, the top is further back than the ledge it was sitting on. Maybe if I'm gonna loosen the bolts that are holding this plywood to the frame, to the bulkhead of the back of the car. And I'm gonna see if I can just kind of squeak it forwards about 1/4 of an inch. Move the foam so you can see what I'm doing. Alright, you should have seen that fall into place at this point. Alright, well, that one's good. I'm happy with that. Alright, so you can see now I'm happy with that. Little spaces in here now between the sheet metal and the hinge, because I didn't realize that if I had taken the wood panel out, this would have slidden in. But that's okay. Like I said, this is all going to be upholstered and with sole foam and everything underneath it. So any gaps over here, that'll all get filled in, so it should be fine. All right, next, like I said, you see this big space here. I do have sheet metal that's already cut and painted and everything for this panel here. I'll get that refit. I'll have to obviously drill the holes for the seat back for the bolts that go into the T-nuts. But that's it as far as this piece and this piece here goes. These are all set now. Next, this is the structure that we changed. One of those modifications was I had a hoop here, a small hoop. But once we re-engineered the seat. We removed the springs in the rear of the car and jacked the suspension all the way up, and we oscillated it side to side, up and down. We realized that I didn't need this hoop. And what we did was I just took some 1-inch bar stock. Everything that was painted was here, except for this piece here. And then we basically C-notched it. The car will never be sitting the way it's sitting right now. So this is the absolute most extreme it would ever possibly be. But it can't ever be like this. It won't ever go to this point with suspension in the car, because right now essentially there's no suspension in this car. It's sitting static on jack stands. We knew that this was safe. So also what that does is it allows me to have a flat seat bottom, so it'll be a bench seat instead of 2 individual buckets, which is going to make things a lot nicer. Everything is now just simply tack welded. So these pieces up underneath here in the back are tack welded. These pieces up underneath there, 1, 2, 3. So that was just kind of a quick overview of what we did, and I'm a little hesitant to move forward with the final welding because I don't want to finish welded in case we end up having to make any other changes. I don't think we're going to. I'm going to wait till Joe comes back and we go back over the seat, because we are going to lower the back of the seat about 2 inches. So we're just going to drop it down so the top of the seat back is essentially where the package tray is, because the way we had it set up, it was about 2 inches over it. And he thinks it's just going to be a little bit too high because it's throwing off the proportions of the back of the seat versus the bottom of the seat. With the back being taller, it looks like the bottom is actually stubbier, and he wants to make it look more proportionate. That being said, I'm going to wait to finish weld all the structure for the seat, and that also is kind of tying my hands with the metal, the sheet metal for the actual seat bottom. I might pull the pedals back out, cut down that brake pedal. I'll show you guys the difference. You can see my makeshift spring. This is an actual clutch spring for a clutch pedal for a Ford Mustang 64, I think, 64 or whatever. But I just put it on there just to hold this pedal up off the firewall so I could work. You can see this is the panel that I made yesterday. Essentially the same thing as the passenger side, except for the openings for the pedals and the steering column. You can see where I ended up having to modify the firewall. So the top half of this is welded. It stops right here. You can kind of see where the metal stops. See? I made it so it kind of laps over it, so the top panel is indented a little bit, and the bottom panel sits on top of it. But what I was getting at before is, it's hard to see, but it's kind of hard to see, but the brake pedal is closer to the driver than the clutch pedal. It should be back like that. So you can hear it's hitting the underside of the toe board, and this one's already at it. So that's what this panel looks like. As you can tell, it obviously took a little bit of work. I ended up welding in this piece here, and then I ended up having to, once this was all bent up, I realized it was too wide, so I ended up sectioning out about a 1/2 inch. So you can see the weld on the underside, and then the weld up underneath in here. So again, what I need to do is I gotta pull this panel out, and then we gotta get these pedals out of here. All right, so you can see here clearly the difference in height. I only took material out of these here. I took 1 inch out. Basically, if you keep it up level, you'll see this is the distance here. I'll pop these pedal pads off. So basically what I need to do is take 2 inches out of this one here. Trying to figure out where I want to do it. Because if I take a section out here, when this arm falls, it's going to fall inside. I'm going to show you guys how I did the pedals the first time. The marks are actually still on the table. I'm trying to use my table, and I clamped the pedals down to the table. So I'm going to recreate the marks that are on the table if you can't see them. And at this point, I'm not changing the height of the pedals. I like where the height is. So you can see the 1-inch mark before. This is where the pedals were originally. You can see the circle. At this rate, the circle would be right here and the circle would be right here. Essentially, all I'm doing is moving the circle down here. So let me grab a square. So at this point here, this measurement is the one I care about right now. When my pedals go back together, especially this one, it's in the exact same line it was in prior. The other thing that I need to make sure of is this contour is the same. This angle here is the same, or the distance. So I want to see if I can find something to shim underneath these pedals to make sure I have everything lined up correctly. So now what I need to do is I need to take 2 inches out of that. So somewhere in this reading, what I want to do is I make sure I want to cut it at the right angle. So what I'm doing is I obviously cut that. I'm going to take my pivot shaft, put it through my brake pedal. I'm holding my little straight edge up against the underside of where I cut it to make sure it's at the proper angle. Holding it on there, and then I'm rotating the pedal down to reach my 2-inch mark, and then I'm drawing a line. So that right there is the angle I need. And that is the fit right there. Very little gap. I am going to have to open things up a little bit just to actually, this has to actually roll forward. So what I need to make sure I do is I make sure I bevel all these areas here and make sure that I get really good penetration. So I'll basically like V everything out so they both come to a point, and then I'll just weld all the way around it, fill it up with weld, make sure it's good, grind it down, clean it up, and we should be good to go. I may make a couple little tweaks with the torch once they're back in the car. I think I can adjust these arms right here. They have a little bit of a bend to them. I like to make them more straight so they go through the firewall nice and straight and they don't actually like sweep and curve. So that's something I'm gonna do. But let me get these ground down real quick and get the pedals welded up. So I got these ground down to points for the most part. As you can see here, I left a little bit where they're gonna touch together. So if you look at them from this side, I'm gonna straighten them out just like that. And I'm gonna get those welded up real quick and get them put back in the car, and I should be happy, I hope. It's a couple days later and I'm back in the shop. I got the day off. It's Friday and I was editing up this video and realized that I just reinstalled the pedals with no camera going. So I'll show you guys. I shortened the pedal length on the brake side and I got just the pedal assembly bolted back into the car. I took my torch and heated up the pedals themselves like I said I was going to do, just to get the pedal to travel through the firewall nice and straight, because they did have a little bit of a hook to them. And when they went through, you know, like at the beginning of the pedal stroke, it would be close to the right side of the hole that came through the firewall, and then as the pedal would go through, the left side would be close, and it would almost touch in a couple spots on both pedals. So what I did was I just heated them up. I got my little springs here holding them in place. And now they pass through the firewall nice and straight. I know not really anything you can see, but they're nice and level. So the next thing I'm gonna have to do in regards to the pedals is I'll bolt the master cylinder back into the car and get everything, like final adjustments done, and just make sure that that brake pedal is gonna sit and reside where I want it to. I did order a clutch cable kit. I'm gonna go with a cable actuated clutch instead of a mechanical clutch, like building like a Z-bar or some type of bell crank. Is the Fox Body Mustangs use a clutch cable that goes from the pedal, goes up through the firewall and down to the clutch fork. So going from an F1 style pedal assembly, it would loop around and it would go to the pull of the clutch fork. So you're pushing the pedal and it would pull the clutch fork. So that's the type of setup that I needed, and he had mentioned something to me that there was a clutch cable kit out there that Brizio Street Rods, they used to sell to the public. I'd been reaching out to Roy or to Brizio Street Rods out in California, and Roy actually just called me back the other day and said they no longer use that type of clutch cable because everything now is LS's and they're not building anything with old parts anymore. He gave me the company's information and I just reached out to them, I think it was yesterday, and ordered a clutch cable kit. I actually ordered 2 of them and told them what I was building, the components that I'm using, told them that Roy had given me his information or their information, and I called them. So I got 2 of those kits on the way. Roy said he always keeps one in the trunk of his car as a backup. He's never had any issues. He's never had any failures. And so once those kits show up, I'll get one of them, get everything installed. There's gonna be some bracketry that I'm gonna need to make for those, but I'll just make whatever adjustments I need to make when that time comes. All right, so that's kind of it where I'm gonna wrap up the end of this video. I just want to show you guys the pedals in the car. Like I said, I made a couple final adjustments after the fact, after I pulled them off the table. I'm happy where they are now. They both stop and rest at the same position. The same distance from the firewalls without the clutch, the pads on. So thanks everyone for following along. Appreciate it. See ya.